You're listening to episode 28 of Producer Talk with Bass Kleph. Today's guest is MSKT, or Musket, a melodic dubstep and future bass producer who also happens to be a US Air Force bomber pilot. Yeah, you heard that right. Now, in this episode, we get into how MSKT went from flying jets to crafting emotionally powerful bass-heavy EDM, why his track Into the Dark feels like a graduation project and his best mixdown yet, what finally helped him go from endless YouTube rabbit holes to confident pro-level productions, and the mindset shifts, daily routines, and sound design breakthroughs that turned a hobby into a serious creative mission. Now, if you've ever tried to juggle music production with demanding life or felt stuck chasing better mixes and unsure where to turn, you're going to love this one. Let's dive in. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the show, MSKT. How's it going?
Good, man. Staying busy.
Excellent. I've been loving all the new tunes lately as well, but for everybody else that if they haven't heard of you just yet, let's start with the basics for them. Tell them who you are and how would you describe the kind of music you make?
Oh, okay. So, best way to describe who I am, I guess I'm fairly new to the game. So it's been 2, maybe 3 years on my musical journey, but I'm a bomber fighter pilot by trade for the US Air Force. So that's my primary job for the time being. And then as far as the type of music I make, I've really kind of settled in over the last couple of years of like transitioning styles. I started with more of a trance type music, shifted a little bit into future bass, and now I'm kind of working into like, I guess it's still kind of future bass, but a little bit of future bass / melodic dubstep. I don't know really how to classify it. If I ask one person, they say it's one type. If I ask someone else, they say it's another. So that's kind of where I'm sitting right now.
Always the
Getting
way,
more
right?
Complicated, I guess, is my time. Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, that's super interesting about the pilot stuff, man. Actually, a really interesting path you've had with the military career and flying jets and now producing music. When did music first start like calling you seriously enough to act on it?
Well, I've had an affinity for EM my whole life, right? I kind of grew up in it. I was a city boy growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio in the States, and got into like the club scene very young. So that was kind of like my entry into the EDM world. I wasn't a raver per se. I missed that scene. Too old for that. But so I've always loved it. I started listening to it a lot when I was flying, which is kind of odd, right? I actually have headphones that I had custom made to fit underneath my flight helmet.
Amazing.
So I listen to a lot of music while I'm flying, which some people think is weird, at least other pilots, but I think it's soothing, relaxing, helps you make decisions.
The other pilots don't?
No. So we do have a system in the jet where you can like pipe in audio through one of our backup radios, and most guys will use that for doing long duration stuff. So think like taking off from here, flying overseas, you're going to be in the air for 18, 20 hours. A lot of that time is just kind of waiting to get to the next point or waiting to get to your air refueling point. So a lot of guys will listen to music that way, but not during like what we would call the tactical portion, like the fight portion, right? I pipe it in all the time. I look at it as similar to driving, right? Like if I'm driving my car, even though I'm actively driving, I still have music on. It's weird to me when I'm doing something and it's super quiet. So I have it on all the time. Also, because of the kind of music that I listen to, I generally pipe it in through my own helmet versus, everyone else wants to listen to classic rock or country or whatever. And it's like, nobody wants 18 hours of EDM blaring through there. At least I do, but not most of the crew don't. So I kind of do my own thing.
I know what you mean, man.
Yeah,
like,
so that was...
I can't do stuff without music as well, too. Sorry, keep going.
Yeah. So anyway, I always thought, like, I'm always looking for new hobbies. I'm constantly doing something. I'm remodeling my house. I've got 5 dogs. I just like can't sit still. I have to keep myself busy. And I've always been a big proponent throughout my life of like evolving and like getting better, right? I never want to get stagnant. So, like I'm learning a new language. I'm trying to do things that are like constantly making me a better person, at least in my eyes, right? At least a more evolved, more well-rounded person. And I was in music when I was young. I was in, did the band years in like elementary school, junior high before I switched over to sports. Played in actually a traveling like small person jazz band on the saxophone when I was in my teenage years for a little bit. So I have the musical, I guess, taste and basic understanding. And then honestly around COVID, so the military, we really didn't take a break, right? We weren't home. Nobody was getting fired. We were still working pretty consistently. There wasn't a huge difference in my schedule. But what they did want us to do is minimize the time we were at work doing nothing. Right? They just didn't want us around people for the max extent, right? So if you're not purposely mission planning to fly a mission the next day, then hey, take your computer home, work at home. Well, so I decided during that time, I was like, this is a perfect time to try this hobby of music production. So I took a class through Point Blank University. It was like the Ableton basics class, something like that, right? And I'm like, oh, okay, I'll learn everything I need to know on how to make EDMs. It'll be great. I took that class. I don't remember how long. It was like either 6 weeks or 3 months or 6 months. I don't remember what it was, but I realized at the end of it that I knew absolutely nothing about how to produce EDM, except for I knew essentially the layout of Ableton and what some of the things did.
Oh, it was more like a manual for Ableton rather than how to make dance music.
So it was genre agnostic. So the class you could be, if you wanted to make pop or country or whatever, it was just kind of like, how do you actually just make something on Ableton that somewhat resembles a song? I remember, and I still have it to this day, the graduating part of the course was to create a track, right? And if my track is so bad, it's just horrendous compared to obviously what I'm doing today. So I made that and, had feedback from the instructor. He wasn't an EDM guy at all. He was a classical musician. So I felt like he didn't really understand what I was trying to get with my sound. So I was actually pretty disheartened at the end of that, because I was like, all right, either I don't know what I'm doing or this process, honestly, it left me thinking that Ableton was so complicated that I was like, there's no way for me to, because I think I'm doing things right, but the sound that's coming out is not what I want. Yeah. So obviously I'm either missing significant steps, this course wasn't in depth enough, or I just don't have it, right? So I pretty much shelved it at that point. And I was like, all right, I tried. It's not for me. I'm going to do something different. I'll find a different hobby. That's when I actually leaned into my house remodel even more and started working on that because I've got a small little ranch out here in Texas. But so call it about a year or so of me just not doing anything with it. I had the basic equipment, but I didn't really invest in anything, quality. And I started, once COVID let up, the music scenes started to really pop off, right? All these artists that hadn't performed shows for a year and a half, 2 years, whatever it happened to be, now it was all the guys that I love listening to are just it's weekend after weekend of killers that I'm like, oh, I've been waiting to see this guy. And they're
who is some of those artists? Who are some of the favorites?
Oh, well, it actually started with an artist who is now one of my favorites, or it's a trio, 3 individual artists that randomly will get together and put on shows, and they actually release music that way. It's actually Elysian, which is Mayor Levi, Emma Hewitt, and Ilan Bluestone.
Nice.
Right. And it was a friend of mine in Austin who was like, hey, I've got tickets to Elysian. I'm like, I don't know if I've ever heard their stuff, right? Because the people at that time that I was really into is kind of your standard in this genre, right? The people that I look up to and try to emulate. Think Seven Lions, Illenium, AU5, Subtron, Skrillex, all of those kind of big names. And then I had my past of people that I, grew up with, Tiesto, Armin van Buuren, Above and Beyond, right? So sort of more on the trancey side of it too. So I basically started going to all of their shows. I've got a list on my phone of all the ones that I went to, but Steve Aoki, Nero, just some of them. But I went to Elysian, who I'd never heard of. And I was a friend of mine in Austin. It's like, come on down, come see it. It'll be good. Trust me, they're awesome. And I went to the show and I was just blown away at, the vocals and just how everything was all worked together. And over the course of probably, I would say 6 months or so of going to random shows, it really culminated in when I went to see Seven Lions at Red Rocks in Colorado and saw them at Last Heroes, who's another, band I'd never group I'd never heard of that came out of nowhere and it opened for them. I was like, jeez, just incredible experience. And it was there that I was like, all right, I owe it to myself, like, to try this one more time. Like, I really want to do it, right? I don't know if I'm going to be good at it. I might be terrible at it. It might be point blank university all over again. I don't know, but I'm going to try, right? So yeah, that was kind of the next phase of my journey, was reaching out to find people that would take me and bridge that gap from, the Ableton fundamentals, right, that I learned in that course, to actually creating the sound that I have in my head, but I have no idea how to create. And I am a hands-on learner. I am a terrible YouTube learner. Like, everything I've done on my house, everything. If you tell me to watch a YouTube video and emulate it, like, it's not going to happen. I'm not that kind of learner. I'm more of a direct, I'm going to try something. I want feedback directly on how to fix it. And then I'm going to continue to refine from there. So it's more like a hunt and peck type learner, which I'm sure has slowed my progress, but it's the best way for me to commit things through memory. If I just follow a video and push the buttons in the same order that they pushed them, without being able to ask questions and well, why did you do this? And why does that make sense? Or why am I pushing that button? It doesn't register for me. And that's probably a side effect of my military career, right? So, I've grown up mostly in the B1. I went to the weapons school program, which is the Top Gun program for the Air Force. I was an instructor at that program. And one of the things that program teaches, besides just how to do things, is the why behind everything. We really, really focus and harp on the why. And so I learn everything by understanding why I did it, not just how to do it. Because if I know how to do it, but I don't understand why, then I really can't mold it, especially with sound design, right? I can't mold the sound. If I have no idea why that knob does what it does, then I'm probably not going to turn it. Because I'm like, oh, well, this video said to keep it there, so I'm going to keep it there. And then, I never really get into those happy accidents, right?
Yeah, that's super important, right? I agree. And I think it's the same with music production. Anything really, if you don't know the why of why you're doing something, you're almost just recreating the steps, like following a recipe or something, as opposed to truly mastering it, being able to be able to make those decisions about what your next move is going to be. Yeah, absolutely. And I think lots of people style of learner as well too. It's super important to have some feedback and stuff, some interaction, and to be able to ask that why. But it's amazing how many things you do at once. You get this super demanding day job and remodeling the house and still doing music and looking after the dogs and everything else too. How do you find time and focus to produce music? Your latest stuff sounds super high level, so incredible. How do you make it all fit in?
Well, I surround myself with smart people, so yourself being included. And we'll talk about that more, I'm sure, later. I think it's the military, and specifically my job or my role in the military over the last, call it 13 or so years, and I've been in for 21, it's just about budgeting and balance and time, right? And so I try to optimize my days around when I'm best suited to do things, right? There's nothing I can do about work. If I have to fly and it's an 18-hour fly day, right? By the time I leave the house and I get back home, I'm probably not doing music that night. My ears are kind of destroyed from the jet. I've got this slow ringing or a little bit of that fog from breathing fake oxygen for, who knows how many hours in the jet. It's really not the best time to do it, but that's the best time to do other things, right? It's all right, music's not primed for me to do right now, but now's a good time to get caught up on something else so that tomorrow when my head's kind of cleared and I'm refreshed and I've got more time, now I can work on music. So it's a little non-optimal because I'd love to do music every day for sure, because I really enjoy it. And I enjoy the problem for it to me. I'm kind of a masochist when it comes to problem solving. I love chaos. I love to try to take chaos and mold it into something. It suits me well in the military for sure. When things start going wrong or you have to plan these complicated things, it's I love dissecting it and turning it into something chewable and then coming up with a solution that works for everyone. And I kind of look at music the same way. So I kind of love a little bit of the chaos. But yeah, so I really just try to maximize my schedule for when I'm best suited to do things, right? I'm not really great creatively in the middle of the day. I'm great athletic performancely in the middle of the day. So that's usually when I go to the gym. But if I sit down at like 3 in the afternoon and work on music, it really doesn't go that well, or does not. I mean, it goes fine. It's just not smooth. It's not just like, I'm not just like clicking. Right? I'm best either like first thing in the morning with a fresh cup of coffee for a couple hours until the day starts going on too much. Yeah. Or honestly, I'm my best. I'm really like a night owl producer. Like I'm my best at like 10 o'clock, girlfriend, kiddo, whatever, dogs are all relaxed and out of the studio. They're all in bed. There's no distraction. There's no extra noises going on in the house. It's dark. I don't know. I guess that's from being in the jet at night all the time, but it's like, it's dark is like my prime, like mood setting to work. And I seem to get the most work done from say like, I don't know, 2200 to like 0100, 0200 the next day. Like that is where I make my biggest moves, which obviously I can't do every night because I got to be at work 6 hours later or whatever. So I try to find the balance. So I do a lot of music work on the weekends, like after when, there's no penalty for going to bed late.
Yeah.
And I honestly love when I have night flights because if I don't have to be at work till 1600 the next day, like it's a free pass to stay up the night prior and get in the zone. So to really answer your question, it's just a balance. I try to optimize the time that I spend doing all the different tasks in my life for when it's the best time to do it, where I can be the most efficient with my time.
Totally. I think that's a really smart way to approach it. Now you've got, speaking of your tunes, let's talk about this latest up and coming one. It's an amazing record. It's not out yet, but I've heard it and it's amazing. It's called Into the Dark.
I heard it.
And you just wrapped it up, right? Coming out sometime soon. What can you tell us about it?
So the biggest thing with this track is I really went outside my comfort zone and closer towards my like inspirational artists, right? The guys that I mentioned earlier. As I've evolved, right, I started, to me, and this is not to throw any spears or not give the appropriate applause as required, but to different genres. But to me, it was easier to start with trance, right? Because there was a little less of a chaos, I guess, when you think about it. Like it seemed easier to tackle as like initial like sound design. When you're talking about the arrangement in the track, it seemed a little bit easier to go through and develop that, which is why I started there, right? And I kind of dabbled in psytrance, and that now goes way into more complicated because you're into triplets and, weird sounds and stuff. So I went from there and then future bass got a little bit more complicated because there's a little bit more growly parts to the music, right? And then this latest track, Into the Dark, is really, probably my second or third where I'm really trying to like tackle that, melodic bass, melodic dubstep. It's not true dubstep, but it's very growly, very lots of random sounds, I guess you could say, are in there and dispersed in weird spots. Right. So it's a little bit more of like chaotic when you look at my DAW versus, if you go back to some of the first like trancey type music I made, it was like very, very easy to like follow what was going on. There was, 40, 50 different lines, or, different tracks, buses there versus like, I think that the last one I did has 100 and something. And like some of them are just like one sound on that whole thing. It's just one little like growl or laser noise or whatever.
Yeah, there's some amazing complexity in there now. Yeah.
Yeah. And so Into the Dark is the first one that I'm really excited about, where I focused a lot on sound design and doing things differently. Not trying to I tried to avoid pre-planning where stuff happened and just messed around and let it kind of happen and then moved it around from there, right? So I actually started with this one with a lot of the growl bass type stuff and just messed around with creating different sounds and just, literally just hunting, like turning knobs, hunting back and like, okay, ooh, that's a cool sound. Like I'm going to use that somewhere in this drop somewhere. I'll figure that out later. Whereas the opposite is I'd create the drop, build a space, and be like, okay, now I got to find a sound that fits in this space, which works. Don't get me wrong. You can still do that if you already know what that sound is in your head, but I didn't know what that sound was at the time. So I wanted to create the sounds that I thought were cool first and then build a drop around it. And then I'm a big fan of vocals. That's probably because of Elysian and some of that. So like the vocals were so powerful in that show, and all of my favorite tracks, it doesn't matter what genre it is, unless it's just kind of music where I just want it in the background, but any like the tracks that I'm really engaged with all have very powerful vocals. And so I've been working with an artist out of Miami, Florida, and she's sung on, I think, 5 or 6 of my tracks now. None of them, of course, are out. That's my own personal problem. I gotta work on fixing that, but she sung on this one as well. And so, yeah, it was kind of I almost look at it, it's not a graduation, but it was almost like if I could have like a graduating project of like all the things I've been working with or working towards, this is kind of the first one where like, okay, that feels like what I've been trying to do for 3 years.
Amazing.
Now I need to get better, right? And a subcomponent of that is the Pro Sound Secret stuff, that I've been part of, as well as your mentorship program, right? We haven't talked about it, but, I eventually got to you in order to clean up my sound and really try to take things across the finish line, right? So the mentor that I had before was a younger guy. He was great. And he's instrumental in being able to take that like initial, okay, this is how Ableton works, and turn it into like, this is how you create EDM. And so he's like critical for being the person that essentially told me, hey man, like this doesn't have to just be a hobby. Like you can do this, right? Like, and I started with him under the understanding, I was like, hey, I'm in the pilot world, in the military world, like it is open kimono, no holds bar feedback, right? If you're feeling too hurt, it's not the job for you, right? Like I have to be able to tell someone that I'm training, like, hey man, you did not do that right. And if you do that again, you're going to get someone killed. So let's check your feelings at the door, focus on the procedures, and like, let's get better at it, right? So I approach music the same way because that's how I've been created. And I'm like, yeah, tell me if I'm terrible at it. Like, absolutely. Like, that doesn't mean I'm necessarily going to quit, but just let me know, like, there's a ceiling, right? And it's like, for an hour, you have a ceiling. And that's kind of how I started with him. And then eventually, after a couple months, he's like, yeah, man, like, I don't think there's really a ceiling. Like, I think you're better at this than you probably expected. So let's pursue that. And, I eventually got to the point where I kind of exceeded like his capacity to create the kind of music that I wanted to create, which is not on him, right? He was just in a different genre. He was still in EDM, but he wasn't really in that genre. So he hadn't really taken the time to kind of develop the skills that he would need to teach me on how to do it. And as luck would have it, you reached out right around that same time looking for mentors. And I was like, hey, I'll take a shot in the dark and apply. Like, who knows? The likelihood is not going to happen, but hey, maybe I'll get lucky, And then I did. And so the other thing with this project, to go back to the question, is that I started with you to be able to take my sound to the next level and then also finish tracks, right? When I worked with my first mentor, I would get the song about 80% of the way there, and then I would just give it to him and he would mix and master it, right? It was expensive. It was kind of annoying. I was like, why can't I just what is he doing? It's either a ton of plugins or software that he has that I just need to invest in at some point, or it's a method, right? I kind of asked him to walk me through it, and he did in some ways, and I would watch him master my tracks sometimes, but it was more of like me watching and like trying to pick things out versus like an educational process. So that's what I got with you, and was like, hey, like I feel like I know how to make the sounds I want to make, or at least I'm on that journey and I know how to figure out how to get better at that. But what I want to do is like, I want my songs to sound done when I'm done with them. I don't want to have to send them off to a sound engineer. They come back sounding completely different. And I'm like, to me, every time I did that, I felt like I had no idea what I was doing when I sent the track off. Like I want to get to that point by myself. Right. And that's not to say that I still don't want another set of ears, and we can get to that too. And that's kind of where Pro Sound Secrets comes in. But it does mean that I want to give a 99% solution to the person that is going to help me finalize it versus an 80% or less solution. And so this track was one of them. It's still like my happiest moment in probably my music journey, or one of them was, I'm going to throw you under the bus here, but your reaction when you listened to it during our session the other day was like one of my favorite things. Because you just on your face, you're like, it's just like, we don't have a whole lot to do here. Like,
Yeah.
you were kind of shocked, which is great, right? It's like, also like, why are you shocked, man? Come on, you teach me. But
It just goes more and more in that direction every time, you
Yeah.
know, because we try to get you to do more and more by yourself until the point they're coming in now where it's like, I don't know what else we can even do. It's basically perfect, man, you know, and it's so great to see that progression and how much your mixes have elevated songwriting and everything too, and the speed of them. And yeah, respect, man. Really good work.
thank you. And yeah, and so that's kind of like this track, right? And I'm on the fence of, do I send it to labels or do I just get it out? I'm so happy with it that I really just kind of want to get it out there. And, I've sent it to friends and, trusted agents of people that listen to EDM, and, their standard response is always like, just like get it out so I can put it on my playlist. And we could probably have a whole podcast on promotion and why I suck at it. But
Well, that's
yeah, so
the next step. That's what you're doing now. Now we got the mix down sorted, the song sorted. Now it's getting it out to the labels and releasing.
yeah. Yeah. So I think I'll probably just end up getting this one out. I might push it to labels. I've got to deploy here in a week for another month or so. So I'm going to be away from my DAW. So that's probably a good time to do some promotion. So maybe I'll look at doing it that way. But yeah, just super stoked about the track. It's got all the elements that I've wanted to work on. It's got a very emotional swing. It's got great vocals. It's got hard hitting drops. It's got kind of a hybrid drop design with, lots of growls and thudders and odd noises, some orchestral, I guess is the way to put it, kind of ethereal parts in between those drops where the vocals fill in. And yeah, I'm really happy with it. And kind of I took a lot longer with it than I have on some of my other tracks because a lot of this stuff was, somewhat new, at least in like my sound design journey and stuff like that. But yeah,
Seemed like you
it's a killer one if you ask me.
Yeah, I think it's amazing. I think it's your best song yet. They all just keep getting better and better, musically and sonically. And yeah, I know you experimented with some new sound design in this one, but you still maybe did the mix maybe fastest. The mix downs just keep getting quicker and quicker, which is amazing.
Yeah, that's obviously working with you every time, we started of just like the fundamentals of mixing and mastering, right? And then we eventually got to the point, you and I, where we would do it together. And for anyone who hasn't thought about and interested in the one-on-one mentorship program or really any of the stuff that you offer on the website, it's killer. Like it's broken down in very simple ways, very small, like digestible choices. And I've told you this before, and I'm going to give you kudos on the podcast. But being in the military, like I've been an instructor in the jet at the highest level, at the Top Gun program, or whatever, since 2012. So for 13 years, right? And the hardest thing to create, I think, in any aspect of the world, but is good teachers or instructors. Right. And I would say you're absolutely amazing at it. Right. So,
Thanks.
you listen very well. You definitely seem to understand the intent behind questions or the overall session. I've never had it where I've been like, hey, I don't really like that. You're like, well, this is the right way. And this is, you got to do it that way. You're always like, all right. Well, there's another way of doing this. And, everyone's ears are different and that kind of stuff. Right. So you're very patient. You take the time to go in and explain stuff and the why behind it, right? Which is, as I mentioned earlier, the key, at least for me, to learning. And I really think it's a key for most people to learn how to solve complex problems. You got to understand why you're making the decisions you're making. So that's been critical to all of it. And then the Pro Sounds Secrets course, we can talk about that as well, has been really beneficial for, when we have those weekly sessions, right? My music might be featured for 3 to 5 minutes of it, right? To get some basic feedback from you on where I need to go. But then, the other artists that are in the course, their music's on there. All their music is great. It's all different subgenres of EDM. So it's really cool to hear oh, that's a really cool sound that was in this, I don't know, call it disco funk EDM type song or bass house song or whatever. And then I could reach out to that person on the side and be like, hey, how did you make that sound? Or what is that sound or whatever? I've done that with Dan Fowler. He and I did a collaboration actually after meeting on the course. He's really heavy into that bass design type stuff. And I
Yeah,
was like, hey, let's kinda put our-
a bunch of people have done some collabs through the group already, haven't they? It's really cool.
Yeah, it's awesome. There's a couple of us that have a text group going too, where we send, like drafts of things to each other. And we're like, hey, what are you thinking on like the direction of this? Is there anything you think it's missing? Do you think the arrangement is okay? You got any random sound design ideas? And, it's cool. Like Caesar, Dan, really the other two, like kind of bass heavy guys in the course, melodic guys, they'll kick back and be like, oh, well, have you tried this kind of sound at this part? And I'm like, oh, I didn't even think about that. I'm like, and then I'll go mess with it and put it in there. I'm like, that was awesome. This works. So that class has been awesome. And then now I have access to all of that course material, which is killer because I'm also impatient in my learning. So like, if you tell it to me once, I'm going to beat myself over my DAW for like 3 days to try to remember what it does before I'm going to take the time to like go back into like one of our sessions and try to find the right moment where we talked about that. So having the course material is great because I can just go to like, oh, there's a 15-minute, whatever, 30-minute video on this thing that I specifically need to. We're like, oh, I'm starting my mixing session. All right, let's get my kick, snare, bass balanced, right? I know there's a video on that. I don't have to like try to find one of the, 10 songs that you and I have worked on and find that specific section in our own personal video. I can just go to the Pro Sound Secret stuff and be like, oh yeah, this is the process, refresh my memory. I do that 2 or 3 times and now it's written in stone and now I don't have to do that anymore. And a lot of that funneled into the dark class. And that's why my mix and master went quickly is really twofold. One, I've worked with you enough times that I'm starting to commit some of this stuff to memory. Not nearly as fast, and my ears aren't half as good as yours are when it comes to hearing sounds and picking out discrepancies, but just doing it over and over again, repetition, I don't have to go back and reference the materials as much. And the same thing is, and I know I'm maybe different than some of the other guys in the course, but I try to do a lot of my mixing and stuff while I'm creating the track. Because I already know I'm going to have to put an EQ on my synth stack when I get to the mix sound phase. Well, I want the song to sound amazing the entire time I'm working on it. I don't just want it to like sound amazing, the day that I'm mixing it and mastering it. So I actually do a lot of my EQ work, volume balancing, all that stuff during my design, which takes me a little bit longer to get like a full design done. I'm not just like 2 hours of throwing stuff out there and then like fix it later. So I do it during the process, and then when I have to get to the mix down phase, now I'm just at like minor tweaks of things. And it makes it a lot
I think
easier.
You're also doing better and better sound selection too. The sounds you start with, you're choosing even better ones every time.
Yeah, and you taught me that, right? So you probably remember, maybe you don't, you work with so many people, but like the first track I gave you, I'm like, hey, here's my drop chords for the track. I probably had 6 or 7 different like Serum plugins stacked on top of each other to get the sound. You're like, you can really do this with like 1 or 2. Mm-hmm. And I was like, no, there's no way. So I am. So like now my bass, it's a single bass. I don't have like, outside of like the growls, that's a whole nother story. But like it's a single bass, and I just EQ it and stuff like, oh, I need more sub in my bass. I need to decrease the width. I don't just like try to, I want a little bit more high end. I want a little bit more presence. I want a little bit more, not so the rumble, but the crackle out of it instead of like, all right, well, here's a sub track. I'll create that. Now let's find, growly bass to get the, 1 to 3 hertz out of it. All right. And I'll put, just stacking these things and then they're all competing with each other, which you taught me about. And yeah, so you've taught me to simplify the process, which allows it to go faster. It actually allows the mix down to be a lot easier because I'm only balancing 1 bass track. Usually my chords, I still have 2, sometimes 3, and that's just very different sounds in order to get like, the presence from like some really thick, warm chords and then the high end from like something slightly different above that. But
still, that's a huge change and a huge improvement from going from 6 to 8 synths to make one part down to 1 or 2 now. So and it sounds better. And but you know, man, it's not your fault. So many people hear that misconception. That kind of advice is all over YouTube. All these sort of tips, and then people come to me with this kind of stuff, and I'm like, I know someone's probably told you to do this, but let me show you another way. It's easier and it sounds better and it's faster.
Yeah, and it's more. It's not even that I was told to do it. It's more of like no one told me never to not do it.
That's a good point.
It was just like, hey, you know, get the sound you want. All right. Well, is there a process for it? Like, yeah. And am I a good sound designer? No, I'm still like very basic on my journey there. I'm getting better, but I'm not by any stretch going to be putting out packs on Splice anytime soon of like cool sounds I created. But yeah, no one just ever, I just always was like, more means like more is better, right? Like, oh, I'm missing this component of what I want. Find a different sound to layer in and find it. Not realizing that it's probably also providing interference in the other frequency ranges that I wasn't trying to target, you know. And yeah, you were kind of the person who's like, hey man, you don't need to do that. In fact, you're probably making your life harder by doing that, which was like critical advice, because less is more, you know, as cliche as that is, really does make sense when you think about, you know, how the frequency spectrum works. And like the more things you put in there, the more things that are competing for space. And, you know, one of the key things that you taught me early on with like mixing and mastering is like, hey, everything has to have its spot. Right? If you want your song to sound clean and professional, like there's specific spots where you want specific things to own, right? And that might change throughout the arrangement of the track, which it obviously does. But like, if you have too many things that all need that same spot, it's going to be a mess somewhere, right? You might get lucky and it might not be, but it's probably going to be a mess. So,
exactly. Really good advice there, man. So much good advice in general. I think it's going to be super helpful for a lot of people to hear. If you had to give one piece of advice to yourself when you were first starting out, maybe even say 3, if you can come up with 3, advice to yourself when you're first starting out with your music, like if you could send a message back to you when you were starting, what would you say?
Ooh, man, that's a good one.
It's basically like where was your mindset at back then versus now, I suppose?
Yeah, I can think of 3 for sure. One of them is be patient. So depending on your musical background, right? Like I have a musical background as in like playing instruments and being, you know, part of a band or bands, but I don't have a degree in music theory. I can barely read sheet music. I have to count the keys on my keyboard when I'm like, okay, I know this one is C. I need to transpose this to F. That's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Okay, that's 5 semitones out. Like I don't just have that in my head. Like if you ask me to do hey, write down a C major chord, I don't know, I count up, like I go to chord, I make sure I set the chord correctly. I make sure it's where I need, I count up from the bass note up 2, up 3, right? Like that's how I do it, right? And then I play it, so it's sound right, it's a sounding key, great. So you have to be patient with really the fact that like, unless you just happen to, it's just, you sit down and you're an expert at it right away. Like there are people that like that. There's a lot to learn, and you have to either take the time to learn it or take the time failing and not letting it, you know, completely derail your process, and understand that I can tell you from experience that if I were to play the song that I created from the Ableton course or the Point Blank course to Into the Dark, it would make no sense that those 2 songs came from the same person.
Yeah, wow.
And
from the old stuff to the new stuff.
Yeah. And that's not because a light bulb clicked on one day and all of a sudden I went from not being able to ride the bike to like, oh, I can ride down the street. No, it's been a slow grind of lots of failure, lots of times just like putting, like smacking my head going like, why can't I get this to sound the way I want it to sound? And just like trial and error, and just not ever getting so frustrated with it. I mean, I definitely did, but so frustrated with it that I would quit. So, you know, maybe that's part of my mentality as a person. Like I don't like quitting things. I've always tried to be a master or an expert in everything that I do. I know I've told you this before, or I wrote this to you, but you know, the military that world, it's very easy to be, it's not easy, right? But there's a very specific path to mastering something, right? Skill has a little bit to do with it, but really like dedication, motivation, time studying, committing things to memory, like learning how to solve problems, learning why you're solving problems, learning the different methods to solve them. Like if you kind of focus and take the time on doing that, you're eventually going to get to the point where you can be in the same position that I'm currently in the military, right? Like as a senior evaluator instructor at, the highest program that we offer for the jet, which kind of leads me to my next point is that you really have to fight your own fear of failure.
Yeah.
Right? So like first thing is be patient, right? You have to be patient, right? Good chance you're not going to be amazing at it right away. There are people out there that can help you, right? Which is actually point 3. I'll get to that. But yeah, fear of failure, right? I have a healthy fear of failure and also a very like competitive, and I'm a very like self-driven, motivated person. So I refuse to fail, which sometimes doesn't help me in my personal life. Sometimes because I'm like, I'm not losing this, but has helped me, especially on this journey, right? And I still have that fear to this day. I no longer have the fear that I'm not going to be able to do it, but I still have the fear that I'm not going to get better, that no one's going to listen to it, that I'm not going to get it in front of the right audience, that, people aren't going to be able to enjoy it as much or won't enjoy it as much as I do. I don't expect people that haven't created music or aren't big, EDM heads to enjoy the process of it. A lot of people I show this to look at it and they go like, nope, I don't want nothing to do with that. It looks way too complicated. But they love listening to the music.
Yeah.
Right? So I have that fear to this day, and that drives me to like continue to get better. It's like, well, the only way to overcome that fear is like just keep getting stuff out there and see what happens. And, as well as anyone, anything like in an artistic pursuit or the music world, skill alone might not be enough, right? There is a chance that you could, there could be some savants out there at EDM that, it doesn't get in front of the right audience. The right people don't listen to it. It never turns into anything besides a hobby for them. And I don't look at this as I'm trying to necessarily build a career, because I have one. Would I like to? Absolutely. But at the same time, like I just want to continue to get better, and I want people to listen to it. Like I am sick of my music. By the time I'm done with the track, I don't want to hear it ever again.
I think most people feel that way.
Yeah. That's like, yeah, maybe 3 months later, I'll be like, oh yeah, that's mine. But I want people to listen to it. I do it for the fun and for the difficulty and like overcoming obstacles, but I still want people to hear it.
Of course.
Right? Like I want my friends to hear it. I want other people to hear it. I love feedback. If you think it sucks, tell me it sucks. Just tell me why. And, I might listen to you or I might not, but, and that's kind of what I get with the pro sound stuff. And so like, you've got to be able to overcome that fear and just keep pushing through. And then my last bit of advice is you can do it on your own, but I don't recommend it.
Yeah.
I really don't. And, unless you just want to unless you're one of those that can learn from like YouTube videos and you've got someone, but those are fraught with peril too. Like we talked about earlier, I've learned things from a video or two that you've been like, please don't do that ever again. I'm like, okay, thanks. And, cause everyone's got their different methods and techniques for things. But once again, if there's no why behind it, then, I've taken some other online courses in sound design that have been really beneficial, but yeah, I think trying to do it in a vacuum is probably just going to delay your course, right?
Yeah.
And it's probably going to take you a little bit longer.
Best case scenario, doing it by yourself, you hopefully get there, but it just takes you could be 10, 20 years, which could be condensed into 1 year or less if with the right coaching.
Yeah. If honestly, reach back, what year is it? 2025. Yeah. Reach back about 4 years ago is when I started, right? Reach back about 4 years and tell me that I'd make Into the Dark. And I would have been like, there's no possible way.
You would have been blown away, right? I think it's better than all the reference tracks you play me, whether musical or mix-wise. Your stuff blows it away now.
Yeah, see, I think I'm biased. I'm biased that my stuff is terrible. It's like always.
I
I
said
always think my songs are bad.
artists are always the most critical of themselves. Yeah. Well, we can let the
Yeah.
listeners be the judge when it gets released. Make sure to check it out.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. And I hope they do and share it and like it. But yeah, so I think finding some method of like support and dedicated education will help whatever journey you're on. It's going to help speed it along, right? Like I mentioned, I had my first mentor that was critical from getting me past the like, I have no idea what I'm doing to like, ooh, this could be a thing, right? And then once I finally got on board with you and then Pro Sound Secrets, the mentorship program, like all that stuff is when it would like really started to click as in like, okay, now the evolution has gone from like this slow, like linear process to more of like a quick, like exponential process, right? So
Yeah.
I don't know what I don't know. And that's what I try to tell people is like, you don't know what you don't know. And if you don't find the right YouTube video or you don't search for the right topic or you don't look for the right sound or whatever, like you're going to have no idea. There's sounds that I use now that if you like a couple of years ago, if you'd have been like, hey, what does a cymbal sound like? I'm like, I don't know. Like, that's like, like that's how bad I was when it came to like the specifics of like music theory, all that stuff. But like, now I know what to search for when I'm looking for sounds. I know, what racks and what stuff I need to use when I'm trying to master things. Oh, you brought it up, but reference tracks? I would have never thought of that. Until I started working with you. You're like, hey, are you using reference tracks? I was like, no, why would I? It's like, then I'm just going to get their music in my head. I don't want their music in my head. I want my music in my head. You're like, no. That's not what you're using it for. Obviously, I do have inspirational tracks that I pull, ideas and stuff from as kind of like arrangement and stuff. But yeah, using reference tracks for like mixing and mastering and being able to see the frequency range and where my songs are lacking or where they have too much or, where they need to be balanced. Like that was huge, like absolutely critical.
Yeah.
But I would have never done that had I just been trying on my own and then like found mixing videos and maybe I would have come across someone that talked about reference tracks, but maybe I wouldn't. Maybe I would have found someone just like, oh yeah, you just got to put EQs here and balance your sound. I'm like, yeah, but I don't know what I'm doing with those EQs because I have nothing to reference them against. Maybe I would have gotten there. But because I reached out of my comfort zone and decided like, hey, I'm not just going to do this on my own and struggle through it for, like you said, 10 or 20 years. I need help. Like you have to admit that you need help and you've got to reach out to the experts. And like you obviously are one of those experts. You've helped so many people. You've definitely helped me. I sing your praises on a daily basis. Every time I email you, it's like, I always have to add a note in there. I'm like, I don't think you recognize or realize how much you've done for me on my musical journey and on like my ability to actually turn this from just a thing I do at night when everyone's in bed to like songs that like when I finish them, I'm like dancing in my own studio to them,
Awesome.
And so that's all critical. And I really, if there's any piece of advice, those are 3 pieces of advice. It's be patient. Don't let fear overwhelm you and reach out to the experts. Like you got to do it.
I love it. That's amazing, man. Yeah, so good. And so much good advice on the show today as well with everything. Really appreciate it. We'll wrap it up in a sec, but what's coming next for you as MSKT? What's coming up on the horizon?
So I'm starting to do one. I've got about 6 or 7 that I'm going to set on I'm going to start releasing. I probably won't push them out to labels. I think I just want to get them out to people and hope for the best there. And honestly, like the labels that I'm kind of targeting, are a little bit harder to target via the traditional methods. And it's honestly something is really what I was going to focus on is that what I need to focus on is a little bit less on my music and more on promoting. So,
well, you've got the music down now.
Is,
the music's rocking. So now we'll get them out to the labels and or self-release. Either way and promote them and get people listening. And I'm sure they're going to love them, man. They're sounding amazing.
I hope so. But the fun part's creating the music, right? The terrible part is me putting my face out on social media and being like, listen to my stuff. So yeah, that's what's next. Transitioning careers, moving to a city out of the country in Texas for the bases into the city where I can start performing and, doing that kind of stuff and really really taking it to the next level or trying to, right? And once again, if it works out, great. If it doesn't, I'm having fun doing it. So that's the process.
Exactly. That's awesome, man. Hey, and finally, where can people follow you and hear your music at the moment? Where should they head to?
Yeah, so I have music on Spotify. It's MSKT, which actually is short for Musket, which is my call sign in the military. But that sits on Spotify. Just realized on Spotify, it's mostly my older stuff. So think more of the trancey, future-based stuff. I really haven't put out any of the new stuff on Spotify yet. Some of that
Coming
stuff
soon,
does live. Coming soon, for sure. Some of those tracks do live on my SoundCloud. All that stuff, I think you have my link tree. You can reach all that through my link tree. But really, anywhere you stream music, you can see the stuff that I've already released, and then SoundCloud's going to have probably about 50% of my new stuff. Some of it's still listed under private links as I try to kick it out to labels or whatever. But you get an idea of, if you go to my SoundCloud, you'll definitely see like my evolution of working throughout the years and then working with you. So I wish I could put a little asterisk for like a Stu approved track on my.
Well, definitely
my
look out
SoundCloud.
for, everyone should definitely look out for In the Dark. Yeah, coming out soon. I think you've done amazing work on that, and all the ones we've been working on. And they just keep getting better, man. It's awesome. And I really appreciate you coming on the show too and sharing all your insight and stories and stuff too. And I'm excited for everyone to hear your tracks as well, because I know how great they are and I want them to experience them as well. But yeah, thanks again, man. It's great having you on the show.
Yeah, and I appreciate it. And right back at you. I can't, for anyone who's listening, like I've got to end this with like a shout out to you. So like you've made my life more fun, honestly, like just well all around. Like you've allowed me to turn something that I thought would just be a hobby or a time killer into something that like I can't wait to do, and I'm really proud of the results from. And that all comes from working with you and the stuff that you've taught me over the years. So if anyone's on the fence about whether or not, Pro Sound Secrets or Road to the Main Stage or any of that stuff is worth it, I can 100% tell you from someone who has no music theory or a basic understanding of music background to where I'm at now that it's 100% worth it, and you'll get 2, 3, 4 times out of it what you pay for it. So I'm a huge fan. You're a friend for life at this point. I've told you that, like, no matter how good my music ends up, and no matter, even if I'm giving you songs that are at 99.9%, I still trust your opinion. I'm still going to send them to you. I still want your feedback. And I know I'm going to get honest, relative feedback. And if there's something that's wrong with it, I know you're going to take the time to teach me. So, like, shout out to you, and I appreciate you having me on and let me talk about it. So.
Thanks, man. I appreciate having you on. I appreciate the hard work as a student too, and all that talent and everything. You're doing amazing things with it. Glad you like the courses and the coaching, and I'm super excited to hear what comes up next after these tracks as well.
Yeah, man. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Have a great day, man. I'll see you soon.
All right.
Big thanks again to MSKT for coming on the show. Such a great chat. Be sure to check out his latest release, Into the Dark, released everywhere on April 25. I'll drop all the links in the show notes down below so you can go and check it out. And hey, if you've been grinding away at your mixdowns, watching endless tutorials, tweaking for hours, but still not getting that clean, powerful, release-ready sound, and not feeling proud or confident to send your tracks to labels yet, well, you're not alone, but you don't have to stay stuck. Pro Sound Secrets is my advanced mixdown program for electronic music producers, and it's coming up again soon. It's a proven step-by-step system to help you mix faster, more confidently, and finally start sounding just like the artists you look up to. Spots are limited though, and the doors only open for a few days. So if this is even slightly on your radar, jump on the priority list now at basskleph.com/PSS so you don't miss out. That's BASSKLEPH.com/PSS. So go save your spot, and I'll see you inside.